think so.
Let's
Welcome, everybody. So a little bit about us of Film Impact Georgia, in case you're unaware. We provide grants, education, and opportunities to filmmakers and creators in the state of Georgia. With a diversity pledge, FIG works to break down the socioeconomic barriers of entry into film and television for Georgia residents. We just wrapped on a logline contest for the month of May that had an isolation theme. We will be doing more of these, so next month we will introduce a new theme, so watch for that. And we have a $5,000 short film grant that we do twice a year. Those applications are currently open, and the deadline for this one is July 1st, so you should hop on over there.
Fabulous. Thank you all so much for coming, and those of you who keep coming back, it's really exciting to see how many of you keep coming back. So let us know what you think about the program and how we can improve it. Very excited to have our friend Ben here, who is an adopted Southern son. Well, I guess you are Southern in general, but Georgia's son, how about that? He's had some production work out here and making some awesome movies, and he'll be able to tell you all about that. So Ben, why don't you go ahead and give us a little introduction about yourself and where you got your start and what you're up to now.
Yeah, so honestly, some of the first things that I started working on that were our own projects were down in Peachtree City, Georgia. My very close friend and longtime collaborator, Danny Madden, grew up down there. So we shot like $3,000 53-minute film called Euphonia in, I think that was summer of 2010 down in Peachtree City. And because we had no money and no idea what the hell we were doing, took us about 3 years to get all the way through post. But then we were able to bring that to South by Southwest in 2013 and then down to Atlanta Film Festival. And we took a very long bus ride between the two of them. So that was kind of like the start of doing it more professionally. I had kind of since I was 18 done production work, driving truck for like AOL was doing a lot of really terrible internet TV shows and things like that at that time. So 5 or 6 of my roommates and I were kind of their like main go-to crew for a while. So that was kind of the start of things. And then have just kind of slowly gotten into reaching into new territories with what we're able to do with a lot of features, but then really still focusing on a pipeline of short films to help develop those features and kind of develop relationships with new directors. It's a way for us to train new producers and just keeping engaged with what you can be doing with technology.
That's really interesting because a lot of people think about, oh, well, once we make our first feature, then we'll just features all day, all the time, or going into TV or something else. But it seems like you're still in the short film world. I wonder if you can just talk about, because obviously we're going to get into some of the other projects you're going on, but you have a history of turning short films into features. So talk a little bit about like some of your first ones that you've done, and then maybe what you're looking for now when you go from shorts to feature.
Yeah, so we've done several now, including a few Georgia films in that short to feature model. So we had Beast, which was at Sundance this year, which Jordan was our casting director on. We borrowed a whole shit ton of stuff from Molly and just had a really great community experience down there. But that came from a short film called Krista, which won a couple of awards at South by Southwest in 2018. We also, at that same time, our company had brought down Greener Grass. So my producing partner for most of the projects, Natalie Metzger, was also in Peachtree City and had that team, which had, I think that was a 2016 short that they created into a feature that premiered at Sundance in 2019. It's a model that we don't recommend treating cynically in terms of trying to create a short just for the opportunity to be able to create a feature of it later. I think that usually creates some really mediocre short films that are kind of just like a scene or the middle of something. I think what makes a really great short film is just this like full experience that you have, and then what you can do to create that feature is taking whatever that kernel was, whatever that world building is that was successful in the feature, and you get to watch it with a bunch of audiences. You get all of these different responses, and you can tell more and more what you love about that idea or that character, and create an even more successful feature is what we've seen, because you've really spent time with this idea and looking at what the kernel is and how to grow that out and how to put it into all of these more creative methods.
So, oh, sorry. Yeah. So one of my my favorites that I've seen of y'all's is Thunder Roads, just because it is such a unique just performance. The lead on that is very charismatic, and for those of you who haven't seen it, it's basically a guy giving a quasi eulogy that to his mother that then turns into a dance routine based on a Bruce Springsteen song, and it's all one shot. So for something like that, and it was turned into a feature film. So for something like that, that is arguably a little abstract, you say it did get turned into a feature film later, but did you have any idea of going from the initial idea of the short film that I was like, this is a cool concept and maybe we'll do a feature later, or this is just a cool concept and we want to get it on screen?
We had, when we went to Sundance with that in 2016, we had 3 other feature scripts by the director that we thought would really work. And then nobody wanted any of them. And so the only thing that we could sell at that point was actually a series of 6 more one-shot short films called the Minute series, which we had down at Atlanta Film Festival, I think in 2017. But yeah, no, people wanted to pay us to do the exact same thing over and over again instead of anything new. So we kind of took from that, and spending that kind of year of 2016 going to a lot of festivals and getting to see it with a lot of people, just hearing those responses of what people were reacting to. A lot of it was the tone and the character, and the plot seemed way less to do with anything. It's not a short film that really is plot driven. That it's about an emotional arc, but not in the traditional way. So it was just taking our time, and we never in that journey really were thinking about the feature. We were thinking about these other projects that we thought would go. And then Jim called me one day and he said, what if the short film is the beginning? We thought the short film, because it's a funeral, because all of that it would be the ending. And we didn't think we could make anything that was good enough to kind of like lead up to that and make that the pinnacle. But creating a funeral that was the start, that was him burying his mother, but then really figuring out how to reconnect with his daughter as a launch point. And then it was pretty quick work after that in terms of Jim wrote a script in like a week. And about a month and a half later, we ran a Kickstarter, started getting funding from wherever we could, raised $190,000. And like the whole time we're just doing script revision, but while all of the other pieces were moving.
Okay. That's really fascinating. It seems like, doing a crowdfunding situation obviously is a good way to get your audience involved and just tracking the information. You know, I just did last year I did a crowdfunding for $20,000 for a short film, and it damn near killed me.
Yeah.
So I understand the ramifications of going out and doing that, but I wonder if you can talk a little bit about your process. Is the crowdfunding always one of the things that you go towards when you are going from shorts to feature, or do you feel like it's an individual situation on that?
It's kind of more individualized. I think it is a really great method. Not trying to raise the entirety of a budget, but we'd like to think of it as like 10% of what you're trying to raise. One of the things that it does that's really important, so we tried to raise $10,000 for Thunder Road. We went out and we were able to raise 37,000, but that success had people reaching out to us. So we were able to bring in an extra, I think it was $72,000 worth of investment from people that we had no idea who they were, only saw us because we had the Kickstarter and reached out because the Kickstarter was becoming successful. So I think a lot of this is like building this myth of success from the very beginning. And one of the reasons why we were raising $10,000 is because we thought we could get to 15 or 20, but we wanted to be able to have that margin where it says 250%.
Yeah.
And have that become part of the story of the film. So it was this kind of like, okay, I think we can cross that threshold right away. So we got to go out and tell the story that we funded our Kickstarter in a single day. And that's kind of like the myth making that you have to do to make a film possible sometimes, because nobody's going to pay attention for their own sake. You've got to give them like a bit of a narrative behind it. Now,
dealing with crowdfunding, you know, some people have this mentality that maybe if I'm going after a big fish to fund my feature, having, you know, a couple of, you know, even if it is dozens or hundreds of people donating it, it might seem like it's downgrading the quality of the production or something, some sort of negative perception of what crowdfunding is. Have you gotten any pushback from larger investors saying, oh, well, you guys are doing crowdfunding and that's not what we do?
I think, again, it's just how you present that. And if you present it as like, this is our audience building, this is creating a sort of buy-in. For Beast, that the short film won a couple of awards at South by Southwest. And so we stayed up all night and we ran a Kickstarter that launched the next day with the short film that launched on Vimeo that day. So everybody who saw that saw the link right below, and we were able to really quickly raise 20 grand. But that 20 grand got us noticed by Alec Baldwin and his company, and they came on and EP'd and helped fund the film and do all of those types of things. So I think if you show why you're doing it and not that it is a last resort, but a real part of a bigger plan, I think it's helpful. And it's allowed us to like turn it into not just crowdfunding, but crowd equity campaigns now. We're in the middle of 2 right now that have raised over $100,000. See You Then and Snake Oil Song, which are both on WeFunder. And we have a feature in post-production now that last year we raised $350,000 in less than a week on WeFunder for.
That's amazing.
Without taking a single meeting, without showing anybody a script, without doing all of these different things that you have to do. But a lot of that is because of our experience with crowdfunding, but also a lot of those investors are people who gave us $50 in 2011 that are now giving us $10,000, $15,000 per project.
Wow, that's amazing. Um, Coming in from all of this with an indie kind of point of view, getting people attached to it, named actors and things of that nature, or even like having, a named DP or something, somebody attached, or an Alec Baldwin, if you can. Can you talk a little bit about your maybe successes or failures of, and whether or not that is important for your feature process, especially going from shorts to feature, having names attached?
I believe in just finding the right cast. Is such a big part of what makes a film successful. You're not, otherwise you're fighting fire with fire, and you have like the littlest pile of sticks, right? Like why are you going into this situation and trying to come up with like the biggest celebrity you can, and you just have Pierce Brosnan in like 6 minutes of your film? Like, it sticks out. And that was a situation where we ran into that when we were casting for Thunder Road, and we were really far down the line with Pierce, and it just like kind of hit us like, why don't we just get a really great Texas actor to play the police chief? Like, why are we going to make this splash where I don't think it really would be? Like, it's supposed to be this thing that qualifies your film as being more serious, but I think there are a lot of different ways to do that. We often really try to lead with reviews, and then also that cast member is really supposed to be helpful for international sales. And our approach with that is just being really specific in a territory by territory way, how we're getting into film festivals in that country and how to make that opportunity into something for a distributor in that country to say yes to. So I think that's more important, focusing on what you would hope that celebrity could do, and do it for yourself.
Yeah. It's really interesting. I feel like audiences are pretty savvy about seeing your Dolph Lundgren in for 2 minutes in the movie and being like, all right, we know what that was. Like, yeah. you gave him like 50 grand to show up for half a day, and right. Now he's on the cover of the billboard,
I'd rather have somebody who's there for 3 weeks with you. Yeah. And is really putting in and really thinking about that character. I mean, obviously, a lot of these people are very famous because they're very, very good at acting. Mm-hmm. So I'm not like saying don't do it, or like there's no way that's gonna work. But I would just really caution people from letting that be something that holds them back or makes them wait.
Right. So moving into this shorts to feature lab that you guys have developed, it sounds really interesting just because so many people are seeing this as a viable way, especially if you don't necessarily have the means to, find the money yourself. Can you just give us a little bit of an overview on the program for those who may not know, and then we'll kind of deep dive into it.
Yeah. So we started this a couple of years ago in 2018. We just had never gotten into like any of the Sundance Institute or Tribeca Film or any of those types of labs for filmmakers. And we realized that there were probably a lot of other people with that same story, that there's only so many different people that those organizations can reach out to and help. So we wanted to create a new opportunity and kind of like send the ladder back down for other filmmakers. We thought it'd be more useful to do that in a way that really gave people a peer group. Is one of the things that we focus on, that this is now a class of like 9 or 10 people that can rely on each other and have this open conversation for the rest of their careers. And we've even like really tried to focus on mingling the 2 classes that we've had so far and make sure that they're a shared resource for each other. I think part of the issue with making it an independent film is that nobody is open or honest or like vulnerable in ways that you really need to understand, like, this is what can fuck you over, or like watching out for each other in that way. So that's one of the big focuses on it. But then also being able to get into the nitty gritty of like, okay, how do you launch your short film in a way that makes you more able to get to the point where you can get that feature funded, get interest in it, do all of those types of things. So the lab is a week long, and it's kind of a really good mix between doing a couple of sessions a day with those specifics of festivals, with online promotion, with this, that, and the other thing, but then also a lot of small group time and individual writing time to develop your projects. And then that's just kind of like the kickoff for it. So we pair them with mentors. We've had really wonderful people in the past, like Derek C. in France, all of these kind of bigger names who've been willing to help out with that. But then I would say every week I'm on a call with at least 2 or 3 of those filmmakers. And we kind of try and support them as they go through each step of the process. So helping them find some of the funding for their film. This year, we're going to hopefully be able to hook them up with camera grants. We've been getting them like Adobe software. We're hoping to build up to the point where we're able to give grants to each of those films as well. So it's becoming a little bit bigger and bigger each year. But yeah, it's all on shorttofeature.com, and there's a little bit of about like the types of projects that we're selecting, and you can see kind of the common themes between them.
Now, are you accepting finished short films scripts or just the actual films themselves? What's the entry level?
Is having a short film. You don't have to have a script for the feature yet. It's usually about half and half, have feature scripts. And then the other half are just in some place on the spectrum of like trying to come up with exactly what that feature would look like.
Now, are you looking for shorts that have done well in festival circuits, or is it just you like what you like?
For us, it's about really being able to see what the feature would be, and imagine this world around it and all of that type of stuff, really being interested in like what could happen here, less than the success of the short itself. We've had a couple of them from Sundance, but then some that like I don't even think played any festivals, didn't get it anywhere, but had like a really neat idea behind them, and now they're features that are winning awards in Poland and things like that.
That's amazing. All right, let's do some audience. Molly, go ahead.
Yeah, so Charles asked a question, like with film festivals in particular, you see a lot of short films that were very obviously a feature film that was tried to compact it into a short, and it just obviously like reads that way. Do you have any suggestions for filmmakers and how to like avoid that pitfall in creating a short film that was a feature film concept?
Yeah, I think trusting your audience is a big part of that. Like you can kind of drop into the middle of a short film in a certain way. Like you don't have to be spending all of this time on exposition. But then I think really limiting yourself to the amount of plot points that you have, I think is a big part of that you don't want to be in a 12-minute short film. You shouldn't be in 15 locations, and you shouldn't have like all of these different things going on. I think that they're a really great opportunity to just like encapsulate this thing. I think reading short stories is a really quick way. If you read like a book of not just like, of course, Flannery O'Connor is great, but there's so many wonderful short stories where you're like, oh, that's the size. Like this is the parameter of what I should be doing. It should be happening and following one course of events, and you're not trying to tie all of these other storylines into it, because that's what a feature is there for. But really focusing on one through action.
That's really interesting. I wonder if, you know, going from short films to features, the idea of doing character studies seems like a good avenue, you know, kind of like how Thunder Road was, where you are focusing on a character and showing them, like, for me, Thunder Road, I watched that guy, you know, cutting hair or driving a car or something like that. Just, you know, he was a very captivating character. Do you feel like that is, you see that a lot in the projects that you're developing, that avenue of just going through a character's point of view, or are you seeing a lot of world building elements to your short films?
I think to me, in some ways, that really good character development is world building. That it allows you to put everything else around this character. So I don't think that they have to be excluded. In terms of world building, I don't mean that you have to like be building this logic around everything the way that you would like in a sci-fi or anything like that, but just like enabling everybody to really see behind the curtain, and spending time with a character is a really great way to do that. That in Thunder Road, there's so many like words that pop into that film that allow you to see all of these other things about the character. When he's talking about his father and he says the word apparently, and you realize that he didn't know the guy then. Like those types of things where you can open up the past in very subtle ways. But I always lean more towards character. And if you're able to really nail down somebody who's interesting and somebody who the audience wants to follow, then you're able to go so many places from there.
For casting, you know, obviously a lot of these short films have, you know, maybe just a handful of cast members. Some of them are friends, you know, some of them are the director. Have you found that having cast members in the short, moving them to the feature, for example, like in mine, you know, there's a hope that there will be some overlap. You know, it's kind of the enticement of some of these people in the short is like, oh, you won't make a rate on the short, but we'll try and get you in on a feature. Do you find that is a benefit, or do you feel like that kind of puts handcuffs on you a little bit in casting, trying to get people from the short into the feature?
I think it's really helpful. It was something for like Beast that I don't think that feature would have existed if it weren't for us having Shirley Chen, who was so fucking good in this Krista short, and wanting to create another vehicle for her and create an opportunity for her career, but also for us to get to play with this person again and be like, oh, what can we do with this woman who's so young but also can hit so many different parts of the emotional spectrum.
That's really interesting. So having some overlap can be beneficial, from what I'm understanding. Really.
Yeah, we cast largely out of like a repertoire. People that like we just continue to write for folks, I think is a big part of that, because you can really play to strengths in a way, where it can be more difficult in casting to find somebody who's exactly hits the notes of this person, but you can build towards somebody's strengths if you know who it is already. I'm going to close my window real quick. All right, that's probably a lot quieter for y'all.
It's LA, man. It's hot.
Yeah, there's some dance music going on in the parking lot. It looks like.
So kind of moving into what you do and your just career as a producer, obviously there's a lot of, producers can be a very catch-all title for a lot of different projects.
Yep.
So,
Pretty useless word, honestly.
yeah. And I think we talked a little bit about that too. But so specifically for you, for the project that you've been working on and you continue to work on, can you describe a little bit about your job as a producer there?
Almost all of the projects that I've worked on are with writer-directors, and they're projects that I've been a part of before they were a script even. And I think part of my job is to be very serious about protecting what the story is and what that kernel is all the way through. So shaping the way that we do a production and what that production needs based on what the story needs. For like Thunder Road, that was a film where we wanted these longer, showier sequences, and that was kind of part of the design behind it. But we would rehearse for 4 hours, and then we'd shoot for 15 minutes, and then we'd come away with 4 minutes of the film. But for Beast, so Thunder Road, we had like 14 hours of footage, something like that, for the whole film. For Beast, we shot over 60, and it was only 3.5 days longer or something like that. But we figured out how to design everything around what was most important to the story, and it was this kind of like authenticity to the world. So we didn't slate anything. We had just a handful of crew members at all times. All of these things just like built around this ability for the actors to really melt into the world that we were putting them in. But for other films, you build it completely differently because that's what this director needs, and you know that, and you know that's what the script needs. But then taking that all the way through the way that we bring it to festivals, which festivals we bring it to, how we do sales on it. We do a lot of that ourselves now because we want to be keeping a tight control over how the film gets talked about and whose hands touch it and who represents it. But then also all the way through marketing materials. So at this point, we have our own trailer house. And so we do that for our own projects, but we also cut a bunch of stuff for Netflix and other companies. So that now when we go into a studio like MGM, we can give our directors an ability to have influence on marketing materials that no other production company really can. And we're able to keep a real handle on the creative throughout the entirety of the process because of that. So that I think is the hopeful vision of what a producer is somebody who's like ready and able to go to bat, not just for the director, but for this story throughout.
That's amazing. All right, Molly, let's get some more audience questions.
Yeah, well, it's actually a perfect segue because Charlie asked, how do you personally decide which projects to move forward with into development?
I think some of it for me is trying to pick stories that I don't think would be told otherwise, and getting behind those films. There's only so many movies you can make in a year, and trying to make the ones that either because of the experience that it takes or the risk it takes, other people wouldn't get on board with. And that's one of the reasons we've really always tried to like figure out the production side and get that out of the way as much as possible and keep our budgets lower, is because it just enables us to take way more creative gambles and give everybody that kind of freedom. But in terms of choosing, it really is about like what the characters are, what the message is, all of that type of stuff, rather than just what's going to sell. I think that's your job, is to make it really fucking good, and then hopefully people will watch it.
You feel like you all have almost a niche of like the type of films that would be coming out of your wheelhouse, you know, like a Lionsgate or Miramax, you know what you're going to see if you start up a production, or a Disney, you know what kind of movie you're going to see. Do you feel like you guys are honing in on something, or is it still kind of a lot of all over the place?
I think it's fairly diverse in terms of like looking at Greener Grass and Beast as two films we shot in the same month in the same town. You would not recognize Peachtree City from those two versions. Like one of them is this like ultra satiric commentary on suburbs and like this really weird, dark, fun comedy. And one of them is like this like Southern love story about like petty crime and gun violence. But I think what both of those have in common is they had directors who had very clear visions, and then everything else was streamlined to just go and support those visions. So I think that's what really unites all of our films, is they're very different from the way anybody else would make a film. This is Danny Madden's film. This is Jim Cummings' film. This is only could have been done by Don and Jocelyn. Like the way those directors work, we really try to push them to go out and get as far into their idea as possible.
That's great. All right, Molly.
Yeah, so Lev asks, how does one find a healthy balance with time and health when it comes to work and life?
You know, small questions.
Next
like
question. I'm not great at answering that, except to say by organizing your work life in a way that it is fully satisfying to you. We shoot a lot of films on location, and for those projects, we bring a lot of like repeat crew members, repeat cast members. They're people, our production designer, I've spent like 6 months in the same year sleeping in a room with him in like 3 different states. And you just make it into this like really caring family, and not in like the you just say that, but when you wrap at 7 in the morning, I'll have dinner ready for everybody at like 8 in the morning, 8:30 in the morning, and you just like have a nice family meal. You get on the same schedule, you care for each other, you do all of that. And I think that's how you make it possible to avoid the burnout and avoid the kind of sacrifice, because you're not going to be able to have everything. I haven't really seen it done, but I think the more that you can really shape the way you work and who you work with, I think you can find something that's at least gives you a lot of the beautiful parts of life at the same time.
Yeah. Well said.
Could you speak to the decision in using WeFunder versus Kickstarter versus Seed and Spark or other crowdfunding funding sources?
So I can't speak to the Seed and Spark thing. I've been really impressed with them. We really like the people there. We haven't used them because we have a really good relationship with Kickstarter, and we know the platform really well. So it's more of just like a habit forming thing. In terms of the difference between how we think about the Kickstarter and WeFunder, I think in some ways, WeFunder is more of like the graduate class of how to do it and what you're doing. And that probably takes a little bit more awareness of the filmmaker and the projects to be as successful. So I think that running a Kickstarter is a really good way to start building that out and start figuring out what you're doing, how it works. And again, a lot of the people that we've had come on as financiers and as people who are giving larger chunks of money to our WeFunders are people who have really followed us through from $20 and $50 donations on Kickstarter. So I think it's just like all of it is about building that community and keeping them a part of it. But yeah, I think WeFunder is really a hopeful vision of what independent film can become, especially as we move into this period where streamers are the only companies that matter, and they're saying yes to 80% of the films that are made, basically. And they're kind of building an environment where it is where they only want the film before it's made, and they're not looking for projects that are already finished. They want things that they can craft, which I think is very dangerous for storytelling, and I think is puts a lot of people in independent film in a very vulnerable spot. I think it's a great model to instead have 300 or 400 people sharing the financing of a film and only having to have $1,000 or $2,000 in it or $100 in it or whatever it is, rather than trying to find people who are risking $500,000 on a project in a very uncertain environment. I think it's a really positive new development that can be used to make films that wouldn't exist in the marketplace that is the near future.
And just to speak on Seed and Spark, the thing that I did, and Film Impact Georgia has a good relationship with Seed and Spark, and we have done events together, and hopefully we'll be doing events together in the future. But the benefit of Seed and Spark is that there is an educational element to it, where you can go through a workshop that they provide that really breaks down what you need to do for getting your project to be the most successful it can. It also has, it specifically is for filmmakers, so people can donate and also see where their money is going to specifically, as well as it also is a distribution platform, so you can watch films on Seed and Spark. So, I think it is an individual case-by-case kind of study. They both do things well. Obviously, Kickstarter has a larger name recognition and kind of gets your name out there a little bit more and possibly could reach a larger audience. But Seed and Spark is definitely holds your hand a little bit more as far as when you're making a film. So, it's a lot of just personal consideration on that level.
Yeah, and we really like the model and everything about Seed and Spark. We just are old dogs, and so new tricks can be a little tough sometimes.
Well, speaking of new tricks, this is something that I was thinking about earlier, and this is completely conjecture, but what we're moving into, the productions that are going back into production seem like they're going to be the smaller productions. So in my mind, it seems like now there may be a window where independent films can kind of move forward and benefit from the smaller scale productions, as opposed to the Marvel movies, which probably still have a ways off before they get up. So it may actually be a window of opportunity for a lot of indie films.
Yeah, I definitely think so. I think that there's a really neat opportunity for figuring out stories that can be told in very limited locations with just a handful of cast members and just a handful of crew members. But I think it's also really important to focus on like what it means to be doing that shit responsibly, because it's people's lives, and it affects the whole community that you're in. So at the same time, taking those opportunities, but also taking the responsibility that they entail. But yeah, we're batting around ideas. There's like a little farm in Mississippi that we could use that has like a couple of little houses on it, and we could probably put up like 15 people. And now it's like, all right, well, that would be our location if this is going to like go on for the next 6-8 months where it's hard to get a real set up and running. And let's start thinking about what could be set there, who would be in it, all of those types of things. Because you're not going to have like auditions or you know, any of the usual things you do, but it is it's about finding those people who you trust and have that buy-in and doing it together, and having, I think, those conversations from the very beginning about like what makes people comfortable, so that you can develop your game plan around what all of your crew and all of your cast say makes them feel comfortable, and not coming from the top down and saying, this is what we're doing, yes or no. I think that's really important to creating that atmosphere of both safety and respect.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think moving forward, we're responsibility and just being, you know, aware of your environment and how you're doing things, and not just being opportunistic at the risk of other people is going to be a constant reminder. Molly, do you have some more from our fine audience?
So we've talked a lot about building audience, but may I ask what part of the process you begin advertising your film? I guess probably kind of like as far as spending money and things like that. Like, are there particular branding strategies that you follow?
Or just in addition to that, getting it out there, you know, teasing it on social media and things of that nature.
In terms of our approach with a lot of that stuff, it's really thinking about what results you want at each stage. So one of the things that we do is we make some really specific Facebook ads for when our films are going to be premiering. So like for Thunder Road, one of the things that we did is we drew a mile circle around the offices of Variety, of Hollywood Reporter, of all of the trades that we wanted to cover the film. And for the month before the festival, we had like a 15-second little teaser that we had filmed on set that was just this beautiful one shot coming up on Jim and his daughter in the film. And we pumped like $250 into that ad. But because it was so geo-targeted and those people also followed the whatever organizations that they were probably a part of, we were able to get really good traction. And so we were named to a handful of those like buzziest films heading into South by Southwest, alongside like huge studio films. And we would be the one independent film on that for $250. So it was using that kind of creativity instead of spending thousands of dollars on a PR firm. At this point, you can take like the entire list from Sundance Film Festival's press attending list, and you can put that all in and direct Facebook ads to each of those people. So it's that kind of narrow targeting. But then, so later on in like the festival cycle, when we're premiering at Athens International Festival in Greece, what we would do is we would drop like $50 on an ad for people who follow the festival and also follow or like Yorgos Lanthimos, because he's a popular person in Greece who has that kind of like similar sense of dark humor. And we were able to sell out a lot of our international screenings because of these small ads. And those things helped us find distributors because we could go to them and say, hey, we have 4 screenings in Greece that are sold out. Like, do you want to announce at this festival that you're our partner? So it's like creating those carrots for people to make the film more valuable. In terms of later on in the strategy, I think it's really important. You have very few dominoes, so you got to stack them as close together as possible to make sure they knock shit over. So for Thunder Road, what we did was so it played South by Southwest, it played Cannes. We did very little over the summer because we had very high expectations for what our numbers in French theaters were going to be. And we wanted everything else to come out after that. So we put, as those numbers were coming in, we had all of our other national premieres in different countries. We did like 27 of those in a 2-month period so that we could be targeting that time once we had those numbers that we could share with other distributors. In that same month, we launched our trailer, and we didn't launch our trailer until we had our iTunes pre-sale link ready to go because we didn't want to waste that attention. So we were able to sell a few hundred of those just based off of the trailer. We ran like a 3 or 4 week theatrical in that window between when the pre-sale link went live and when the film actually premiered on iTunes. And we kind of traveled the country all in that like small segment of time. So you're just trying to make sure that you're using every bit of publicity at the same time. And you're doing that when you can have the film actually bought by somebody. So we had a couple of big reviews that we knew were going to be coming out at some point, and we asked like Rolling Stone to hold off and not put their review out after South by Southwest, but wait until we had our theatrical for it. And that made a huge difference of what we were able to do. Because people were actually able to go and buy it, and we didn't have to like go and remind people what Rolling Stone said 6 months ago, 7 months ago.
That's great. And it's interesting. So Rolling Stones actually complied. They were cool with that.
They were very sweet about it. Yeah. Yeah. Like we asked, we didn't tell them.
Yeah, sure. No, that's a really smart way of going about it. Is just like kind of strategically planning some of these reviews for product.
Yeah.
So we're running out of time here, but I don't know how much you are able to speak about. South by actually, obviously, was virtual this year, which frankly I appreciated because I was able to see a lot of films that I wasn't able to see, by not attending it. I know that really sucks for a lot of filmmakers. So can you talk a little bit about, because Beast was supposed to be there, or was there. So can you talk a little bit about how you guys are adjusting strategy, or is that still very much in flux, or where are you guys at with that?
Yeah. We're definitely still adjusting. I think it's a difficult thing. And again, it goes back to what your team's goals are for the film. We have held off on any of the virtual screening of different film festivals, which has been really difficult because a lot of them are like festivals that we love, that we've had really good relationships with, like Cleveland and Maryland Film Festival, these really amazing regional fests that we want to support. But with that film, because we do have, we do have real expectation of what the international value could be, and there's not the same leniency that there have been from American festivals coming from European festivals or European distributors, that that online premiere can really take away from the ability for you to promote. In terms of short films, I think that the online festivals are really incredible. And it was great getting to sit down at the beginning of quarantine and watch every single South by Short this year. That was really a neat, rare opportunity. I think that those are really great ways to get out there and promote your film and find an audience. I just I worry about having your film online ever at all for even a couple of hours, though. Even small films get leaked, and it really hurts the film, not just in the traditional way. I don't think they're competing markets. I think piracy happens by people who pirate stuff. It doesn't happen by people who buy stuff, but they also trash your film. So Thunder Road had a leak just a couple of weeks before we were supposed to go on iTunes. The aggregator accidentally released it in like 70 countries it was never supposed to be released in. And so in like 2 hours, it was up on Pirate Bay and all of the other sites. And we went from, I think it was like an 8.9 on IMDb, and we flooded down to like a 7.1. All of these hundreds of new reviews in just a few hours. And it was like all of these people giving 1-star reviews, even though they had stolen the film. So I think that there's a lot of that kind of that necessary worry, because you do have to protect your investors, especially if you're hoping for those folks to come back and be a part of your career going forward sustainably.
Yeah, that's really, really fascinating. And, you know, obviously it's still a bit of a moving target in this industry, what's happening next, but it sounds like you guys are being proactive. And if nothing else, you've proven yourselves to be nimble and creative in this industry, which is really exciting.
Yeah, I think there's some really hopeful things that are going to happen. I think when films are coming out, one of the things that I'd love to see is like really supporting the simultaneous virtual screenings with theater screenings. It's something that we're talking with like some of the Alamo draft houses about, of like, okay, they can only have 20, 25 people in a theater, but what if we can show our film in that theater, have a Q&A simulcast, but also have that available to their community members at home? Because I think one of the things, again, about responsibility is we don't want to create incentives only for people who go out. So creating these opportunities in a really equal way for people who are staying home over the next few months.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think there's lots of opportunities to get creative and do those things.
That's amazing. Well, thank you so much, Ben, for being a part of this. There's a virtual applause that's happening right now. So, and we will be, for those of you who have been listening, we will be releasing these online in some way or another. We're still kind of strategizing on how to do that. So please make sure you check in next week. I'm personally very excited about the next one. It's Tara Oates with Picture It, which is a development production company in Atlanta that's to a lot of that has a first look deal with CDS Studios. And spoiler alert, I'm actually been signed to Picture It for a production that we're developing. So
congratulations!
Yeah, it's funny. We've been signed for. It's actually a story about my brother and I and us being homeschooled, which is shockingly relevant at the moment.
Yeah.
Which we did.
Put that out now, bro.
Like seriously, we had nothing going on this deal for like a year and a half, and then all of a sudden it's just like, all right, ball's rolling. So we'll see where we go with it, but it's going to be some very interesting and insightful conversations about just the development process on the television front. So Molly, can you tease a little bit more of upcoming nonsense?
Yeah, so July 1st is the deadline for our short film grant for $5,000. If you don't get your project in by July 1st, we'll be opening up another one a month after that. We do those twice a year. There are COVID-19 resources on our website. So if you want access to some free stuff that is available, or mental health resources and things like that, CreATL is a $1,000 grant that will be opening up applications tomorrow for $1,000 for gig economy artists in Georgia. So that's great. And then obviously I put the link to the Ask a Pro Anything with Tara in the comments.
Great. All right, Ben, thank you so much for your time. It's been a really awesome conversation.
Thanks, y'all, for showing up. Take care, y'all.
All right, peace.
Bye.